Hi, I'm running for the board. I'm a fiscal conservative. I think we need to watch the taxpayers' penny as best we can. The fire department does need, they do need money, and they do need some equipment. Radios, I think, is one, and we've spoken about that already. There's got to be a way to figure out how to do it. I think we really need to hold the line on going to the taxpayers and one more time. They're not ready for it. No mill levy increases have been passed in I don't know how long for schools for anything. It's going to be tough. I am not. There's some word out there that I am pushing for an all-volunteer department. I am not. That is not what we want. It's not what we need here. We've got too much commercial development. We're too spread out to be an all-volunteer department. Alec was part of the committee that hired the new chief. I think we need to give this guy. We need to support him. I think they've hired a top guy. Anytime I've heard him speak and from other people, I think he's a top guy. He's got some ideas. We need to support those ideas. He's spoken of recruiting and retaining volunteers. I think we need to increase our volunteer presence. We need to train them. It's my belief, and I was asked that, and you probably saw it. We also saw questionnaires from the guys at some of the paid staff about training. I think everybody in that department ought to have the same training. I think it builds teamwork, it builds camaraderie. Everybody functions better as a team. That's about it. Alec?
Do you want to talk about Grady?
How about Dolan? How do you feel about that? Sort of in the past. Have they ever settled that together?
You know what? I think, and Alec would be better. He's on the board already. Be better to speak about that. It is in the past. We've hired a new chief. I think he's a great guy.
I kind of like Dolan myself.
I think he was a lot of people like him.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the issue, but there's some issues, and I really think one of the issues goes back to that. I think we need to build teamwork in the department. I think that's one of the things that seems to be lacking right now.
Me? The lights on me. I knew my picture was going to be taken. I would not run for the board. Well, I've been on the board twice. I mean, I'm on the board now. I was on the board a couple of years ago. I filled the position that was vacant. And, I raised my hand and made the mistake of raising my hand. Somebody said, okay, do it. And then I was off the board. I lost the election to this guy here, which was probably a good thing. And then there was another vacancy on the board, and finally I got back on, and the county commissioners appointed me. But the main thing is that I felt that big problem, two problems with Elk Creek. One is lack of leadership. And I don't mean board leadership, I mean, CEO-style leadership. Somebody who could lead both the fire department, the board, the community, and everybody else. When I started, they had a chief. Did you know him, Canelli? Did you know him? Yeah, well, they had a chief, a paid chief. Were you on the board at the time? And I don't know, I guess he wasn't the guy for us or something. I don't know what the story was. But then we had some disruption. We had delay in dealing with the issue of what we're going to do, and there were different items tried. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But it became clear to me, after listening to everybody, that we had to get a full-time paid chief. And that's what we did. We had an excellent committee. We used the committee structure. In the interim, before this happened, Len and I served on an interim management committee where we helped Pete Idle Joe Page managed the department in a temporary basis. Then we went through the 6-month process of hiring a chief. Good process, I think. So we have somebody who deliberately looked upon to bring new things, new ideas, and his experience into the department. One of the things that I saw on the internet when we were hiring him is that I think he was involved in developing a very sophisticated, what they call a level of service study. And that means that before they make judgments about spending money or buying equipment or anything else, they try and measure the level of service of the fire department. And they then take that document out to the community and say, well, okay, what level of service do you want? And one of the things I like about our fire department is it's our department. I'm paying for it, I'm benefiting. It's not like we're not saying against the school board, but it's the county, and then there's the state, the feds. The department's right here. We're the only ones paying for it. And the ambulance fees and so forth. So, it's our fire department. But I think what we have to do is get out to the community and Lawson has said this, to try and get some kind of a understandable study of what is the level of service we in the community want to have. And then have the experts, Lawson, and say, well, okay, if you want this level of service, this is what it's going to take to give you that level of service, and this is what it's going to cost. We either have enough equipment, or have enough volunteers, or have enough paid staff, rather than saying, gee, we need all this stuff. And we do need stuff, but in the bigger issue, I think we can accommodate radios and some of that other stuff within our existing funding. I don't think we have to, if we were to get a fire truck, well, we'd have to lease it. But as far as the other stuff, we're getting some money from the feds because we participated in Lower North Fork and we're being paid for that. And we'll probably get about $40,000 over and above what the staff gets paid, which we can use. And I think Lawson's idea, and I think the board feels this way, let's use that money for stuff for wildlands. Right? And one of the big issues that came up was this whole radio nonsense. That's a problem. Even if we get the new radios, it's still a problem. I think Bill McClough has done a couple of things. Number one, he's convinced, I think, the sheriff to change the way evacuations are done. I mean, here's a guy who comes in for 2 months. He's gone down to DEFCO and talked to Ted Mink and says, we used to do it this way up in Washington. It's a better way, 3 stages and so forth. He's also trying to work with the other departments to get some kind of a comm plan, a communications plan, so that as soon as we get on a and it doesn't have to be a fire, it could be any kind of a multi-department incident, a lot of mutual aid up here, be able to talk to each other. He has these ideas, and he's being paid for it. He's being paid well for it. We're proud that we're paying him well for it. But this business of the taxes, and I went through the tax hike and all that kind of stuff, but I think the biggest problem is nobody really knows what the fire department does. I mean, they know what they do, but they don't have any. When I moved up here, we live up right here off of Richmond Hill Road. We go up Richmond Hill Road, so we pass by the fire station every single day, at least twice. It's a fire station, with fire engines in there. I guess they do something. So only when I got involved in coming to the board meetings, attending all this stuff, and I went through the rookie class to learn how to fight fires, even though I'm too old to do it. So I went through the whole rookie class. I got some medical training, and been to training. Very complicated stuff. It requires training. It requires trust. Because you've got to, if he and I go out on a fire, I've got to trust him with my life. He's got to trust me with his life. Training, I think that training is actually more than people realize. There's a lot of trainings that go on. Not as much participation in them as there ought to be. That's an issue for the chief to decide. I don't think. The other thing I should tell you right out the front is I am not in favor of the board managing the fire department. That was an issue up here. It's nonsense. The board supervises or oversees the activities of the fire chief. The board deals with fiscal problems. The board deals with statutory problems. The board deals with financial, keeping the finances up, making sure they're accounted for. But nothing that has to do with buying radios or not buying radios or having prescribed burden. That's all the chief and the chief's officers to deal with. We've got some talented people down there. So this business of the board, now I do other things in the fire department. You know, I volunteer for slash collection and all this kind of stuff. And I went around putting out those address signs and so forth. But when I'm doing that, I'm not a board member. I'm just a wheel chopper. You know, just somebody who takes orders. I take orders. That's what I do. I like to be involved in it, so I do that. When I'm sitting behind the board desk or whatever during board meetings, then I'm a board member. And I think that every board member, you know, I know there's some question about this, but I think board members should be involved in the fire department. They should know what's going on. They should take on those activities, but not as board members, just as individual volunteers. And you know, that gets them involved in it, and then they can go out and talk to other people in the community. And that, by the way, talking to other people in the community, is something that I've seen Bill McLaughlin do very well. I mean, he's been on TV. I mean, he just landed here. On TV, he's sort of the center of attention. He's one of the first people on that fire. What else do you want? This guy is really. We need to support him. We need to let him do his work. The board is going to take his recommendation and, you know, make a decision. He'll come to the board and say, "I want to do X. What do you think?" Now he won't say that as far as, you know, day-to-day operations and who gets recruited and what kind of training, but he may come to the board and say, we'd like to make a major purchase, or we'd like to do something, or we'd like to change some major policy. Let's say it's this out-of-district versus in-district volunteers. But we're not going to tell him what to change, at least when I'm on the board. I'm going to wait for him to tell us, and ask us what we think, and ask the community. Especially in these bigger issues, the question of taxes and capabilities, and, you know, I think, you know, Grady's right. I mean, we have a combination department, and I've always liked that. I mean, keep in mind, I'm a taxpayer too. So one of the reasons I'm interested in the fire department is every morning I wake up, you know what the first thing I see is the Buffalo Creek, High Meadow, and Hayman fire leftovers. I just open my eyes, and that's what I look at. Yeah. Now I look at North Fork, and every time I look at North Fork, I get very sad. I know what happened. I watched that fire. We evacuated out of there, even though the fire wasn't coming at us, and it's a big deal. But I'm glad I'm involved in the fire department. I think it's a worthwhile thing. I think more people in the community, in addition to going to these parties and the Nine Health Fair and the Christmas party and so forth, ought to know what's going on in the fire department and be interested in it, because it does affect everyone.
Thank you. Save a little time for questions.
Okay, I'm Len Wisnesky. I need to qualify a few things before I begin. I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a board member, and representing Greg Branch, who could not be here tonight, who is running for the board. Greg has been on the board for approximately 2 to 3 months, and he's seeking election, obviously. In doing so, I'd like to read some of Greg's attributes. However, if you have questions for me, I have had several discussions with Greg. I've gotten to know him well, and I think I can speak on his behalf as a citizen who knows Greg. If you have questions for me as a director, I'd ask you to qualify that so that I don't get confused. Okay, so Greg has been endorsed by the Elk Creek Firefighters Association. He's supported by the majority of the Elk Creek Board of Directors. He's endorsed by Dr. Roger Matthews, Conifer Medical Center, Dennis Gilbert, pastor at the Pine Community Church, Brian Catalucci, 767 Captain, Senior Pilot for United Airlines, and many more prominent community members. Greg has actively invested in the community over the past 20 years through participation in numerous sports coaching positions and active involvement in athletic opportunities for children. Greg has led several homeowners associations over the past 12 years. Greg is a very knowledgeable and responsible candidate, well-versed in working within budgets, investing in a fiscally responsible way, and developing community goal-focused near and long-term plans. Greg will leverage 30-plus years as a technology executive with key business, leadership, and organizational skills. He's committed to leveraging strong community focus and investing responsibility in our community, Elk Creek Fire staff, and equipment while avoiding the self-interest and conflicts of interest of the past. Learned the key lessons from emergencies like the Lower North Creek fire. We must ensure tighter, seamless communications, use current maps and mapping technology. Providing better education for our community on the benefit of alerts and fire mitigation while developing community action plans for fire mitigation. Ensure our Elk Creek Fire Department team continues to receive the training needed to keep pace with our growing community needs. Encourage even stronger participation in future Elk Creek Fire Academies, which directly benefit all of us. Provide state-of-the-art equipment and technologies as we are financially able to optimally serve our community's needs, be proactive in running a fiscally responsible fire department, and strongly support our new fire chief to make a measurable difference for our community.
Did you bring me one of those?
Yeah, I'll pass this out.
Try to write this up.
No, I'll pass this out.
285 bound.
And
285 bound.com.
in closing, it's been my as a citizen of Conifer, as a taxpayer here, I can indicate that the current board, from my aspect of sitting, looking at things, is very compatible, is working well together, and this is a crucial time to support the new chief in forging forward to develop new programs and better service to the community. So I personally, as a citizen, endorse Greg and endorse the incumbents who are running. Thank you.
How many vacancies do you have, and are you guys running against each other?
Well, we're not running against each other.
There's 3 people running and 2 vacancies.
3 people and 2 vacancies. That's my question.
I'm not totally familiar with the current composition of the board, but at one time in the recent past, there were firefighters serving on the board. It was something I personally was not in favor of. Are there currently firefighters on the board? There is still one firefighter on the board.
Which one is it?
I'm not sure.
Mike Barton.
Pardon me?
Mike Barton.
Mike Barton.
Yeah, he's a captain of the department.
Right.
I think it's good to have at least one firefighter.
That is a subject for another discussion. That having been said, and you speaking on behalf of Greg Branch, are any of you in favor of any type of mill levy in the foreseeable future to increase funding for the Elk Creek Fire Protection District?
I am not.
Only if the chief makes a study and communicates with the community and sells that to the community in terms of defining a need and defining a service.
Okay. And on behalf of Greg?
On behalf of Greg, I cannot answer. On behalf of myself, I can.
And on your own behalf?
On my own behalf, we're going to be doing we're taking the opportunity of this tragedy that happened to do an in-depth study and come up with an action plan as to the exact needs and what is optimally beneficial for the community, what our services are, what the community desires, what level service the community desires, and based on that, we'll make a definitive decision as to whether to go for a mill levy increase or not. At this particular time, I think it's a question of doing precise logical diligence and assessing what the community desires as well for making that decision.
Are you for a mill levy or not?
Pardon?
Are you for a mill
I
levy?
tried to explain that, sir. I think we need to, I'm a physician,
They
so
study everything to death.
what I do as a doctor, I study a situation, and before making a decision, I like to know exactly what I'm dealing with. I'm not being political. We are doing an in-depth study, and then we will make a decision based on that.
Well, if you go to the community, in my experience with business or anything else, if you go to the community and ask them what level of service they want, it's all going to be dependent upon how much it's going to cost them. Under normal economic circumstances, I think we could all support getting the very best of the best. But there are some people in our community right now that would go over the top if there was one more tax levy. Totally over the top, and we would have some more foreclosures. So I do think your question is very legitimate. If you go to the public and ask them, they're going to say, no, I do not want to increase taxes. What are the other alternatives for increasing performance at the fire department? The one thing that lacks right now is community involvement. The only time people get involved is after a disaster, and I think the key to raising money for a fire department is to have the community involved with the fire department. I don't know what's been done over the last couple of years. I see no outreach.
There's not been a lot.
Yeah,
There will be a lot more now.
There needs to
That's a
be
good
more.
point, Connie. I try to teach my kids to find out what things cost before they decide what they want.
Well, before we even go out, we have to establish what potential costs there are.
I thought I wanted a Jaguar for about 10 minutes.
But we can raise the money as a community through donation if it's done properly. And I don't care what kind of equipment that is needed. It can't be that much. When you tell someone, I need a pair of roller skates and this is what you're donating for, they know what they're donating for. It's out of the kindness of their heart, and if there's camaraderie, it can be done. It's been done all over in other volunteer type situations, including California, state, all the other places that I've lived. I'm not running, but anytime I hear a question about a tax levy, I am very concerned. People cannot afford that right now. This is the worst possible time. However, they might give $5 if there's food out there, $10 if they're told that this is what you're going to purchase for that. I guess I'm just siding with you that is a very legitimate question. It's something to be considered. I'm certainly not arguing with you because I respect.
I can't argue because we have to do an in-depth study before we even reach that, and we have public meetings every month. The community, it's transparent. You've been to several. There's been, please attend. There is a section during the meeting for citizens' issues. Any citizen can bring up an issue for discussion, and I encourage that. And I completely am in favor of totally involving the community and having the community collectively come forth, and so we can work together on
They
what's
have to be
better.
encouraged. If people are not going to come unless you put a lot of effort.
As I indicated, Chief McLaughlin is well aware of that, and that's a major priority item.
Yes, I hope that changes.
On another subject, I've been on a 30-year campaign to get roadside shredding,
Roadside,
chipping, shredding, shredders like chopping up branches.
right.
Because every year I make 4 or 5 trips over to this shredder operation, and the least efficient part of that process is loading this stuff into the pickup truck. And I have a front end loader in my house and pack it down, and I still can't do it. And then I have to pay $6. So I pay $20 if somebody would come get it and shred it right there by the side of the county road. You guys ever done a study on that?
Not since I've been on the board.
We, our HOA,
The big deal to me is this fuel load that's out underneath the trees and in the trees.
we applied for a state grant to do just that.
To study it or to?
No, to do it. But we weren't funded. We asked for some money from the state. It was a competitive thing, and I think only 10% of the applicants actually got money. But this was for Conifer.
Going back for a second to the mill levy issue, several years ago I was part of a Blue Ribbon Committee along with several other members of the community to assess the needs of Elk Creek Fire Protection District. And after a fairly exhaustive study, we came up with the fact that the department was severely underfunded, and there was aging equipment, and we were unable to provide a level of service that we thought was necessary for the community. And so right after that, I became part of the board of directors. I, like Alec, filled in for a position that had become vacant, ran for re-election or for election on that issue as part of a cadre of people that felt, and believe me, this went against every particular personal philosophy that I have about raising taxes. But I hate to admit it, I ran on the concept of needing to increase the mill levy to fund the fire department. Suffice it to say that I lost the election, the mill levy lost. Passing a mill levy in this community at any time, and we had justification, and we provided justification to the community. It still did not pass. This community is loath, as am I personally, to any kind of tax increase. It drives me nuts when I hear people talk about wanting to increase taxes or increase spending. That having been said, it comes back to the earlier discussion that you had with regard to level of service. What does this community want? If we want bare bones, we're going to get bare bones. If we want a certain level of service, 70% of the calls that the fire department gets are health related. They're ambulance calls. And as a result of which, do we want ambulance service 10 hours a day, 14 hours a day, 20 hours a day, or 24 hours a day? It's going to cost. So the community has to understand, and they have to buy into what the community will need. And that is one of the critical aspects of this. So I don't envy anybody on the Elk Creek Fire Protection District Board, because anytime you have to go to this community or any community and say, we want more money because, you're going to have a built-in objection.
So I think the objections are legitimate.
Yeah, and
I mean, some people, there are a lot of absentee property owners up here.
Yep.
When you do a mail ballot, they get the mail and say, what do I care if the place burns up? I got insurance.
Yeah.
You know,
So
I don't care. And I think that the other thing is that fires, to many people, even this North Fork fire, I saw it because I overlooked that. You know where I'm at. But anybody down in Shiloh, just down the mountain from us, wouldn't even know there was a fire.
Exactly.
When the first time they did that prescribed burn, my wife and I went down on the River Road to see if we could find it. This was last year. We couldn't find it until we turned the corner on River Road, and finally we got some smoke. And it was, and you didn't know it was there. It was just down from you, down last year.
Somebody told
Somebody told you.
There's notices on the box.
But the point
I
is,
know it Monday though.
yeah.
I go down.
But I mean, if the problem probably is that I was up, we had a fire called the Oxio fire, one of the first down in Texas. The first fire I saw, we moved up here, and so I stopped at a grocery store up here, and I said, "Do you hear about the fire?" He said, "What fire?" All you have to do is turn around. You can see the smoke. I think that if people decide they don't want to pay for it, they shouldn't have to pay for it. But let's not hear people yell on the screen that we didn't have qualified people there, or the ambulance didn't come, or your insurance wouldn't cover it, or all this kind of stuff. If you want to be independent, you want to do your own firefighting, you want to do your own ambulance, hey, knock yourself out. But see, that's the great thing. We have control of it. It's our service. We either want a service or we don't.
And that's why we have elections.
Yeah, that's why we have elections. That's why we have bond issues. And you know, the other thing is there's a lack. This is our fault. This is Elk Creek's fault. Some of the other fire departments, but it's also the individual's fault. As soon as we moved up here, one of the first things I read, you're living in the forest. Our house is fuel. We're living in fuel. Well, I want to know where
And surrounded by.
Well, but we're living, the house is a tinderbox.
The house is
Or
part of
surrounded by a tinderbox. And I want to know, you know, are there facilities, are there firefighters, do they know what the hell they're doing, and so forth and so on. If you don't think that that's going to happen, a lot of people, no, it never happened here, right? Yes, it did. And it will in the future. It will.
Well, I'll say, we picked up the Foxen Road for years, and a lot of cigarettes in the town.
Oh, yeah.
But the mitigation is the answer, Bob. You gotta check this stuff. I developed a couple subdivisions. I had to not only thin out on the ridges, I had to check everything. And that's far better, and there's no risk involved, than this so-called controlled burn. I mean,
The problem with
what
the chipping, yeah.
chipping, well, I had to spend $50,000
There you go.
each.
There he is.
Money, right.
I do slash every single year. I got a trailer full of it sitting up on my property now. I'm out there with a chainsaw when you can use a chainsaw. I'm out there, you know, cutting stuff. I was out there the other day, cutting ladder trees. All the trees go up to 13 feet. So I live it every day. I don't have to, it's not theoretical for me. But I don't have, that's our neighborhood up in Piano Meadows. I mean, we put that grant together, and I put it together and filed it. They didn't get funded, but it would require people to put in their own labor or put in their own money. And, you know, some people say, I like my trees.
Own money.
I like my trees. I don't have the money to do it.
Well, there's people who have a shortage of money, and they also have the age factor. That doesn't mean they should have to move.
Right.
Because they can't clear their land.
Right.
And typically, being from an insurance background, most insurance companies will come out and inspect your home and tell you what they want to have removed before they will cover it. They do it every few years or so. Whether you're familiar with this area or not is a whole other thing. But that's another thing, and I do think that.
But if we put a community chipping program together, where are you going to get the money from?
It's volunteers.
No, it isn't volunteer.
Yes,
Excuse me.
For slash.
I'm talking about slash. I'm talking about cutting wood. If you're able to do it, you know how to use a chainsaw, and you got some help around, or you can hire some help. That's great. But you know, I couldn't. I've got another piece of property in Conifer Meadows. It's a fuel box. I'm trying to figure out some way to clear that stuff out. You know, even if I was young and vigorous, I couldn't clear all that junk out.
And there really are areas that you can't go in and chip.
And the other thing is, there are property owners. I've got somebody where we live has got 11 acres up there, and it's vacant land. It's been vacant land and stay vacant land. So at least they gave me permission to pick up any dead wood that's around the driveway, so I can clear the drive, so I don't get a lot of get a lightning strike up there. We're in trouble. So they said, any dead stuff, if you want to pick it up, that's fine. But what about the rest of the stuff? What about Denver Mountain Park? What about even the stuff up at Beaver Ranch? I mean, there's just a ton of stuff up here.
Robert, is it illegal, or anybody know whether it's illegal to use prisoners to help remove?
Well, the state can, sure.
If the state, well, I feel since the state started this stuff fire to begin with, and they do control burns, we should request the prisoners.
There was a bus full of Department of Corrections people on
But why can't we get them in here to
Because
start
it costs
calling
money.
out some
It costs money.
slash?
It costs money.
I see them at Beaver Ranch. I bring them into Beaver Ranch all the time.
I'd like to know, I'd like to have a study on how much that would cost, because I'd be more than happy to do a volunteer function to raise the money to do that in the worst needed area. We've got Gaboyevich here, what's his name from Chicago?
He's
He could do slash
he'll be great. I get to see Blagojevich with a chainsaw.
Yeah, he could do signatures.
Because that's what they used to say about me. But, well, the main thing we have to do, we already started here tonight, is we develop the need. And we start talking about chipping. We start talking about helping like these slash files. We start talking about that stuff. And if we got enough people together, maybe we could find a grant somewhere. But getting people together to do it, not easy.
Who owns the chippies they take it to the high school?
That Jefferson County.
They don't own it.
No, they contract with them.
It's
I'm just wondering
something,
if we could have,
AAA
you say
composting.
roadside, the same thing, go into neighborhoods and let all the neighborhoods come in there and chip
That's
it
what
off.
we were gonna do. That's what we applied for grant money
Yeah.
for.
Because I think that-
does it.
To get efficient, you need
Because
to
you own
truck
your
drivers.
truck,
You all
I
get
drove
together and do it.
4 miles to the high school. How much
Volunteers.
is I lost,
Screw the
you know, and
team
everything
here.
else, I know.
I can drag more limbs to the county right away than in one day that'll go in 10 pickups. The inefficiency of the whole thing
Yeah.
is
We'd have to get together, we'd have to get, if we were a municipality, there'd be a forestry division of the municipality to come around with city trucks. And like IREA hires people to cut the trees around their power lines. You see these guys from Asplin up here, big huge trucks and stuff like that. And the same thing, if we were a municipality, we'd have to raise some money somehow. We'd have to get a federal grant, we'd have to get local grants.
Mill levy.
But you know where the grants come from? They come from tax dollars.
Yeah, it's
That's exactly right.
Comes from tax. We get a federal grant, we feel great. So now we've got somebody else paying for our stuff.
Better than the politicians taking it first.
Well, that may be true, but I don't think we should ask people in another community to pay for our stuff. Why don't we pay for our stuff?
You know, the Tennessee Homeowners Association have a lot of things. They have things for plow roads, all that stuff, and they do roadside chipping. And I have a study on what that costs them to do.
Yeah.
But they did it the dumb way. They did it with hand-fed limbs with a big end first. And,
You do have a study?
yeah.
Well, why is
Well,
it?
I have an economic result of what they did.
We'd be very happy to look at that.
And why isn't the charge associated with, like, your study? You charge whatever it is that you either draw even or you make a little bit of money. Why are we losing money because we're doing, I don't understand that. If you're gonna take the stuff off the property to prevent a fire, you should pay for the service to charge. Why are we charging so little and not get, I'd like to see that study too.
Well, there are a lot of, the mountain of slash that we have. Firehouse 3 in Canyon.
Right.
And the homeowners cut that stuff, they bring it in, and they pay $6 for a pickup load to put it there. So, we're not reindeer. We have people out there that are working pretty hard, but they could do twice as much if they didn't have to drag it to that one spot.
Absolutely, and you'd be willing to pay more. I know we would be willing to pay a lot more. And elderly people, maybe there could be a special deal, but I don't see why we're losing money on a service we should be drawing even or making money. It's a service, if you went outside and paid for it, you'd pay the same competitive price. And there are people who do that for a living.
What's elderly?
Hourly?
What's elderly?
I'm not going to speak for you, but I'm not really shape to do all that stuff anymore. So but I'm talking about people who are possibly disabled, people, there should be special deals. There are people who just simply can't, either because of financial circumstances, disability, but I don't see why we're losing money on anything. It should be run like a business. You make a profit or you don't. people should be willing to pay for service.
Well, I have the phone number of the guys that bring their sub grinder up here and
Yeah,
reduce that mountain to slash into the small mountain.
that's what we should compare to what they charge, what we can charge.
It costs
They're
them,
making a
it costs
profit.
them about $100,000. Jeffco pays about $100,000 every season for those guys to
For that
mulch that stuff up. And those $6 and the $10 that you put in, you know, people think it goes to the fire department. It doesn't. It goes to Jeffco
Right.
to help subsidize, but they always never cover their costs. And so the reason that tub thing's out there is because Jefferson County is willing to use taxpayer dollars to put that out there. Now they were going to put another one up here in Pleasant Park Road, and yet there's a big hassle about the noise and so forth. And they're thinking of putting slash collection. There's another one supposedly going in up at Pine Junction somewhere. So there will be closer, collection, but you'll still have to get out there and do the labor on your own property.
Well, I'm going to try to write up a story for the Alabama Times that I thought would be here and you're going to do your own story. And I can have your email address.
Unless you want to.
Sure.
I might run it by you first, which totally violates the principle of journalism. I'm an engineer.
Give me that piece of paper I gave you, I'll write my email.
I barely made a seed freshman. Made names business.
I would like to re-qualify that my discussion about the mill levy was Len Wisnesky as a director, not representing Greg.
I didn't hear that repeated.
The whole discussion about the mill levy, I was talking for myself as a director, not representing Greg.
We don't know if he's for or against it. And you're against the mill levy.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
Oh, by the way, you didn't mention this, but Senator Tim Neville has come out and supported him also, upgrading for the fire board.
When's this election next?
8th of May.
At the station.
Next Tuesday, and you have to appear between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., and it's a ballot at the station.
At the
That's Station 1.
Station
Which we hold up.